I'm really glad you're here tonight. This hour is different from the rest of the day. It doesn't ask you to decide anything. It doesn't ask you to perform or explain or keep up. It simply invites you to lie still and let your thoughts move at their own pace. As the years pass, nighttime becomes a kind of companion, a place where the mind is free to wander without interruption, where memories return not urgently but patiently, where understanding settles in quietly without needing words. Later in life, the mind doesn't race the way it once did. It reflects, it revisits, it connects dots that once seemed unrelated, and it does this most honestly when the lights are off and the world has gone silent. This space is for those thoughts, the ones that don't surface during the day, the ones that arrive only when you're alone with yourself, resting, remembering, and gently making sense of a long, lived-in life. So take a slow breath, let your body soften into the bed, and allow this night to meet you where you are. And now, before we begin, if this kind of honest, gentle reflection speaks to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And down in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. There's something comforting about knowing we're all here together, scattered across time zones, but united in these late hours when the world finally grows still. So settle in, adjust your pillows, find a comfortable position, and know that for the next hour, you're not alone in whatever wisdom you're carrying, whatever understanding you've earned, whatever truths rise to the surface when the lights go out. Let's begin. The midnight mind. It is late. Later than most people you know are still awake. And yet here you are, lying still, your eyes either closed or resting softly on the ceiling above you, your mind doing what it always does at this particular hour, moving, remembering, turning things over slowly, the way you might turn a smooth river stone over in your hand, not searching for anything in particular, just feeling its weight, its texture, its quiet realness. This is what the midnight mind does. Not everyone understands this. Younger people assume that being awake at this hour means something is wrong, that you should be asleep, that your mind should be silent. But you know differently now. You've lived long enough to understand that the midnight mind is not a restless one. It is a reflective one. It is a mind that has accumulated enough experience to have something genuinely worth thinking about. And it chooses the quiet hours for this particular kind of thinking, because the daytime is too loud, too full, too demanding for the depth of reflection you're capable of now. You didn't always feel this way about late nights. There was a time when staying awake past midnight meant something else entirely. Excitement, celebration, road trips and long conversations that didn't want to end. Early flights to places you'd never been before. The night was about anticipation then, about what was coming, about what you might do or discover or feel. But the midnight mind of experience is something different. It is not oriented toward what is coming. It is oriented toward what has been. It is a mind that has already gathered enough memories, enough lessons, enough mornings after to understand that what happens at night belongs to a different category of living. The nighttime doesn't produce, it processes. It doesn't plan ahead. It understands more deeply. And there is something quietly extraordinary about that. So you are here tonight, lying in the dark, letting the midnight do its work on you, gently, without rush, without agenda, exactly the way real understanding has always arrived. Not all at once, not loudly, but gradually, with the patience that only experience teaches. What experience actually feels like. You've spent a lifetime accumulating experience, but no one told you what it would actually feel like to carry it. In your younger years, you thought experience was something you collected the way you collect objects, that you would stack it up on shelves somewhere inside yourself and consult it when needed. That wisdom would arrive like a certificate, something formal you'd receive all after enough years and enough trials, that one day you would simply know things, and that knowing would feel solid, unshakable, complete. And in some ways, that is true. You do know things now that you could not have known at 30. You know which problems solve themselves if you leave them alone long enough and stop interfering. You know which arguments are worth having and which ones only serve your ego. You know that most of the things you used to lose sleep over never happened, and that the things that actually transformed your life arrived without warning anyway. You know how to read a room the moment you walk into it, how to read a person before they've said very much at all, how to sense what lies beneath the surface of what someone is saying, beneath the words they've chosen, in the tension they're carrying, in the way they hold their own hands. But experience doesn't feel the way you imagined it would feel when you were younger. It doesn't feel like certainty. It feels more like texture, like the difference between studying a map of a city and actually walking its streets for 30 years. The map might be accurate, technically correct in every detail, but the person who has walked those streets for decades knows something the map can never contain. They know the way afternoon light falls on a particular corner in October. They know which streets flood after heavy rain. They know the shortcut that only long-time residents use. They know where the best view is, the one that no tourist guide mentions, because they stumbled on it by accident one evening when they weren't looking for anything at all. That is what experience feels like. Not the map, the actual streets, the pavement beneath your feet, the unexpected turns, the places you found by wandering rather than by following directions. And tonight, lying here in the quiet, all of those streets are present at once. Every neighborhood of your life illuminated softly in memory, available to you in a way they never are during the busyness of daytime. You lie here, and the full texture of your life surrounds you. Not like weight pressing down, more like warmth rising up, like the particular comfort of being somewhere you have lived long enough to call truly yours. What only time can teach. There are things you could not have been told, things that simply had to be lived before they could be understood. Tonight, your mind returns to some of them, not with regret, but with a kind of warm recognition, with a nod, with the quiet acknowledgement that these lessons arrived exactly when they were supposed to, even when they were difficult, even when they cost something real. You could not have been told, for instance, that grief doesn't end the way people imply it will, People tried to give you this information. They meant well, but you did not understand what it would actually mean to carry someone with you every single day, long after they were gone from the world. You didn't understand that you don't move on from loss. You move forward with it. That the people you have loved and lost don't disappear from you. They take up permanent residence inside you. They become part of how you see things, part of what surfaces at midnight when the room is quiet and the mind is free to go where it truly wants to go. They are here now, some of them, present not as pain necessarily, though sometimes that too, but as a kind of companionship, as the soft and steady awareness that they existed and mattered and shaped everything you became in the years that followed knowing them. You could not have been told what time actually feels like from the inside, that the years would move the way they do, both impossibly long and shockingly short at once, that you would remember certain decades with vivid, specific clarity and others only in broad, impressionistic brushstrokes. That time itself would become one of the things you meditate on most at this hour, not from fear of running out of it, but because you have finally developed a genuine relationship with it, a respectful one. The relationship of someone who has lived inside time long enough to watch how it actually behaves, how it compresses and expands without warning, how a single afternoon with someone you loved can feel more real and permanent than entire seasons you once passed through without noticing much at all. You could not have been told what patience really means, not the version you thought you understood. You thought patience was about waiting, about enduring, about keeping your frustration to yourself while the clock moves slowly and things fail to happen when you needed them to. But patience, as you know it now, is nothing like that. Patience, as you have actually learned it through living, is a form of deep faith. It is the quiet, hard-won knowledge that things unfold in their own time and on their own terms, that forcing rarely works and allowing usually does, that the most important things in your life arrived not because you chased them down relentlessly, but because you became the kind of person who could receive them when they came. You could not have been told about the extraordinary freedom that arrives when you stop organizing your life around what other people think of your choices. No one could have convinced you of this at 25 or even 35. It would have sounded like defeat, like resignation, like giving up on what other people thought of you. But you understand now that it is the opposite of resignation. It is perhaps the most genuinely expansive thing that happens to a person over time when you stop building your days around the opinions of people who are themselves just figuring things out. The space that opens up inside you is remarkable. You become more fully yourself, more honest, more genuinely present with the people who matter to you, not less connected, but more, because you are no longer performing for anyone. You are simply, completely, authentically there. What the night returns to you. There is something particular about the way memory works at night. During the day, your mind is organized around what needs to happen next, around what is required of you, around the forward momentum that daytime demands. But at night, when those demands fall away, the mind reorders itself. It stops moving forward and begins moving inward, backward, sideways through time in ways that don't follow any calendar. Tonight, memories are arriving the way they always do in these late, honest hours. Not in chronological order, not in order of importance, in the order they want to come. The order that only your heart and not your schedule understands. You remember being someone who didn't know yet how things would turn out. That version of you existed in a state of uncertainty, so complete it was almost physical. You had hopes and fears and plans, many of which dissolved and were replaced by other hopes and other fears and other plans. You were reaching constantly towards a future that kept shifting as you moved toward it. And somehow, out of all that uncertainty, you built a life. This life, the one you are lying inside right now, in this bed, in this room, in this quiet that belongs to you. The life you built is not the life you planned when you were 20 or 30 or even 40. It veered. It surprised you. It gave you things you didn't know to ask for and withheld things you were certain you needed. It introduced you to people you never could have imagined, and sometimes removed those same people far too soon. It took you to places you expected and to places that had no map. And here you are now, at this hour, on the other side of so much of it. Not at the end, but far enough along to have a perspective that only distance provides, far enough along to see patterns you couldn't see while you were living inside them. Far enough along to understand that the story of your life, however complicated, however imperfect, is genuinely and deeply yours. You are the only person who has ever lived this particular life, with these particular people, in these particular moments, with this exact combination of joys and losses and ordinary Tuesdays and extraordinary transformations. No one else has lived what you have lived. And that is not a small thing. That is not a thing to pass over quickly on the way to sleep. That is a thing worth pausing to recognize, here in the dark, where the noise has finally stopped. The architecture of understanding. You have built something over these decades that most people don't think to name. You have built a way of understanding the world, a framework assembled from thousands of experiences, thousands of observations, thousands of moments of noticing how things actually work when you stop assuming you already know. Your framework is not a philosophy you can write down in a notebook and hand to someone younger. It doesn't translate cleanly into words. It lives in the instinctive way you respond to a situation before your conscious mind has finished analyzing it. It lives in what you notice first when you walk into a room, in what your body registers before your brain has caught up, in what you trust even when you cannot explain exactly why you trust it. This framework took decades to build. It could not have been shortcut. Every failure contributed to it as much as every success, perhaps more. Every relationship that didn't work shaped it as powerfully as every relationship that did. Every wrong turn you made, every time you chose the harder path without knowing it was the harder path, every moment you acted from fear instead of courage and had to live with the consequences, all of it became material. All of it was construction. And tonight, lying here in the darkness, You can feel the solidity of what you've built, not as pride exactly, more as a kind of quiet steadiness, a groundedness that doesn't require you to prove itself to anyone, a rootedness in yourself that the younger versions of you were always chasing but couldn't quite reach, because it can only be built by the one thing that cannot be rushed: time, experience, a life actually and fully lived. You have lived a life actually and fully. That is worth saying slowly and letting it settle into you before you sleep. The wisdom that lives in silence. People talk about wisdom as though it is something you express, as though the measure of how much you have learned is how eloquently you can teach it to someone else. But the deepest wisdom, the kind built into you through decades of living, doesn't work that way. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive in sentences. It lives in silence. It lives in the way you respond to things before you have decided how to respond. It lives in what you no longer need to explain, defend, or prove to anyone, including yourself. You have watched people over the years try to pass experience on to younger people. You may have tried this yourself, and you have seen how often it doesn't land the way it was meant to. Not because the wisdom isn't real, but because wisdom cannot be transferred. It can only be lived into. The younger person listens and nods. They receive the words. They file the information somewhere, but they don't yet have the container to hold what the words are pointing toward. That container is built by living, by falling, by making choices and living inside their consequences, by losing things you counted on and finding unexpected things in the spaces left behind. The container takes years, decades, and once it is built, the real wisdom fills it naturally, without effort, without announcement. This is why midnight feels like home for your kind of mind. Because midnight is quiet, and what you know at this depth of your life is also quiet. It doesn't need to be proven or validated or witnessed by anyone. It simply is, present, yours, real, in the way that only things earned through living are real. You carry more right now, lying here in the dark, than you may realize. You carry decades of knowing how to navigate situations that others walk into blindly. Decades of knowing when to act and when to wait, when to speak clearly, and when silence serves the moment better than any words could. When someone sitting across from you needs advice, and when they need only to feel that they are not alone. When to keep fighting for something, and when to allow the river to carry you, because swimming against it is only exhausting you without changing where the current goes. This knowing is in you. It has been built into you. And tonight, in this silence, you don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to teach it or demonstrate it or explain it to anyone. You simply carry it. You rest inside it, and that, tonight, is entirely enough. The conversation that happens at midnight. There is a conversation that only takes place at this hour. Not with anyone else. With yourself. With the version of yourself that is honest in a way your daytime self sometimes cannot afford to be. The version that doesn't need to present well or hold it together or make everything sound more coherent than it actually is. The version that can simply say what is true. That version of you is fully awake right now, and it has things to say if you are willing to listen. Not always in words, often in feelings, in the quality of weight that certain memories carry versus others, in the particular ease of some thoughts and the lingering resistance of others, in what your body holds tightly, even as your mind tries to relax. You have done good. That is what this honest version of you is saying tonight. And tonight you allow yourself to hear it without immediately deflecting, not as flattery, not as a way of avoiding what was hard or what went wrong, as honest fact. You have done good in this world. You have helped people. You have shown up when showing up was genuinely difficult. You have loved people in ways that changed them, and you have been changed by being loved in return. You have made things. You have contributed. You have, in your particular and unrepeatable way, in your specific corner of this world, mattered to other people's lives. And you have also fallen short. That is also true, and the honest midnight self doesn't ask you to pretend otherwise. There are things you would do differently now, knowing what you know, conversations you wish had gone another way, moments where you were less than your own best self, choices that cost you things you still carry. You hold these too, not as condemnation, not as the whole story, but as the honest and complete picture of a life genuinely lived, rather than a life performed for an imaginary audience. You are not your best self in every memory, but you are real in all of them. You were there. You were trying, even when the trying was imperfect, even when it looked more like failing, even when the cost was higher than you wanted to pay or were prepared to pay. And that matters. Being present and real and genuinely trying in a life that asked more of you than you sometimes had available. That is not a small thing. Tonight, you offer yourself the same quiet understanding you have learned slowly and through difficulty to extend to others. You do not require yourself to have been flawless. You do not need to have done everything right or made every right call or been strong every single time. You only need to have been here, living this life with as much honesty and care and presence as you could manage at each particular juncture. You were. You did. And you are still here, breathing, resting, alive in the quiet of this midnight. And that is the whole conversation. And it is enough. The things you no longer need to prove. Sometime in the last decade, something shifted, something loosened. You're not entirely sure when it happened, or whether there was a single moment you could point to and say, that was it. That was when things changed. It was more gradual than that. A slow releasing, a quiet putting down of things you had been carrying without fully realizing how heavy they were. You stopped needing to be right in the way you once needed to be right, not because you stopped caring about truth. You still care deeply about what is true, but you no longer need every conversation to end with the other person acknowledging your correctness. You can say what you believe, offer it clearly and honestly, and then allow the other person to do with it whatever they will. You have learned that you cannot force understanding into another person's mind. You can only make the offering. What happens to it after that belongs to them, not you. You stopped needing to justify your choices to people who weren't directly affected by them. At some point, you simply began making decisions according to your own best understanding of what was right, and then living with those decisions without constructing elaborate defenses for them. Not carelessly, not without thought, but without the exhausting internal tribunal that used to convene every time you made a choice that someone might question. You stopped needing to be the most impressive person in the room. You remember what that hunger felt like, the need to be visibly competent, visibly accomplished, visibly worth everyone's attention and respect. That hunger took up so much space inside you for so many years, and now it has quieted to nearly nothing. You can sit in a room full of people who know more than you about certain things and feel genuinely interested rather than threatened. You can ask questions without worrying that asking reveals ignorance. You can say, "I don't know," with the same ease you once only reserved for things you actually knew with certainty. These releases are not losses. That is the thing you want to be clear about, here in the honest dark. Each thing you no longer need to prove or protect or perform is not something you gave up. It is something you graduated from. And the lightness that followed each graduation, the space it created, the energy it freed up for the things that actually matter, that lightness was worth every year it took to arrive. The quality of this particular silence. You have been quiet in many different ways over the course of your life. There is the silence of awkwardness, when no one knows what to say, and the empty air between people becomes uncomfortable. There is the silence of grief, which is not empty at all, but filled with the weight of everything that cannot be said. There is the silence of exhaustion, when you've used up all the words and simply have nothing left to offer. There is the silence of conflict, the deliberate withdrawal of communication as a form of protest or punishment or self-protection. But the silence of this midnight hour, the silence you are resting inside right now, is none of those. It is the silence of completion, of a day that is finished, and an evening that is wound down, and a person who has arrived finally at the part of the day that belongs entirely to them. This silence is not absence. It is presence, your presence, undiluted by demands or performance or the continuous management of other people's perceptions of you. In this silence, you are simply you, the full, unedited, completely private version of you that very few people, perhaps no one, ever sees entirely. The version that doesn't have to be anything in particular. The version that has already taken off every mask it wears for every different audience and is just here, just breathing, just alive in the dark with no performance required. You have earned this silence. Every decade of showing up, of giving, of navigating, of enduring what needed to be endured and celebrating what deserved to be celebrated, all of it has led here, to this room, this bed, this hour, this particular quality of quiet that only experience makes possible, because it takes years to stop being afraid of your own company, to stop needing the noise that younger people keep around themselves to drown out the inner voice. You have made peace with that voice. You have learned to find it not frightening, but companionable. Not an accuser, but a witness. A reliable, honest, present witness to everything you have been and are still becoming. The silence holds you tonight. It doesn't demand anything of you. It simply offers itself, and you receive it. You lie inside it, the way you might lie inside warm water, supported, surrounded, perfectly held. Your body softening into the mattress, your breath finding its own natural rhythm, your mind beginning to slow its turning, not because it has been forced to stop, but because it has said enough for tonight. You are lying here in the quiet, at the end of another day of being who you are, a person made of decades, a person carrying years of living in every part of you, a person who has known enough of the world to understand it a little, and enough of yourself to no longer be a stranger in your own company. This is enough. This moment, this breath, this particular night among all the nights you have been given. And the midnight holds you as you rest inside all of it. The understanding, the memories, the wisdom that doesn't need to announce itself. The life you've built and the people you've loved and the things you've learned that no one could have taught you. All of it here. All of it yours. All of it present in this one quiet and deeply honest midnight hour. The bridge into deeper stillness. Before sleep fully arrives, there is a place you sometimes find. A threshold. A space between the waking mind and the dreaming one. And tonight you are approaching it slowly, with no rush, with nowhere else to be. In this threshold place, you are neither fully here nor fully gone. You are not entirely in memory and not entirely in the present moment and not yet in the dream. You are somewhere more spacious than all three, a place where the accumulated weight of your life becomes, paradoxically, the very thing that makes you feel lightest. Where knowing a great deal feels, in this particular darkness, like being allowed to know nothing at all. Like being returned briefly to a kind of openness you haven't felt since you were very young, before the world handed you so much to carry. Your breath is slower now. You can feel it without trying to change it. Each inhale arriving with a little less effort than the one before. Each exhale releasing something quietly, not in any dramatic way, but in the small and continuous and generous way that genuine rest always offers. When you stop resisting it, a little more softening with each breath, a little more settling, a little more trust that the night is large enough to hold you while you stop trying to hold everything else. Your body remembers what it is for, not only for working and carrying and showing up and enduring, but for this too, for being still, for receiving the quiet without needing to fill it, for lying in the dark and not performing anything for anyone, not even for yourself. You are exactly where you are supposed to be tonight. In this bed, in this room, in this body, in this life that you have built and lived and carried through every season it brought you. And just ahead, just past this final, slow, unhurried breath, the deeper night is waiting. It has always been patient. It does not rush. It simply offers itself, the way the best things have in your life, not with urgency, but with openness. Quiet, still, entirely yours. The deeper dark. You are still here, still breathing, still resting in the quiet that has been holding you since the first words of this night found you, and the night has deepened since then. You can feel it. The particular quality of the dark at this hour is different from earlier. It is denser somehow, softer, more complete. The world outside has settled even further into stillness. The sounds that were present an hour ago have faded almost entirely. There is only the quiet now, only this room, only this bed, only you, lying here in the accumulated peace of a mind that has finally begun to loosen its hold on the day. You have already done so much tonight. You have remembered, you have acknowledged, you have sat honestly with the full weight and full richness of everything you have lived. You have looked at your life without flinching, which is not a small thing. Most people spend enormous energy avoiding exactly that. They fill the quiet with noise, with screens, with busyness, with anything that prevents them from sitting alone with the complete and honest truth of who they are and what they have built and what they have lost and what they carry. You did not do that tonight. You sat with yourself. You allowed the full conversation. And now, on the other side of it, something in you is quieter than it was when you first lay down. This is the gift that honest reflection gives. Not answers, necessarily. Not resolution to the things that remain unresolved, but a kind of cleaner air. A sense of having met yourself honestly and found that you can bear what you found. That you are, in fact, still here, still intact, still someone who deserves to rest. So let the deeper dark receive you now. Let this second half of the night do what the second half of the night does best. Not the active remembering of the earlier hours. Something slower than that. Something more like settling, like sediment that has been stirred, finding its way gently back to the bottom of still water. Peaceful, natural, unhurried. The way things always settle when you stop disturbing them. What your body knows. While your mind has been traveling tonight, your body has been doing its own quiet work. And right now, in this particular moment, it would be worth turning your attention gently toward it, not to examine it critically, not to inventory what aches or what doesn't function the way it once did, but simply to be in it, to notice it with the same patient attention you have given your memories and your reflections tonight. Your body has carried you for decades. That is not a metaphor. It is a literal, physical, extraordinary fact. This body has walked every mile of your life. It has gotten you up every morning, sometimes easily and sometimes with great effort, and moved you through day after day after day. It has healed from things that seemed like they might not heal. It has adapted to things that changed its capabilities without asking your permission. It has carried grief in its muscles and joy in its chest and tension in its shoulders and relief in the long exhale that follows, finally letting go of something heavy. It has also given you pleasure. Beauty has entered you through it. Music, touch, taste, the feeling of warm sun on your face after a long winter, the sensation of cold water on a hot day, the smell of rain on dry ground, the particular comfort of a familiar hand in yours. All of these things came to you through this body that is lying here right now, heavier than it was an hour ago, warmer, more relaxed, releasing itself slowly and naturally into the mattress beneath it. You do not have to love everything about your body to be grateful to it. Those are two different things. You can hold complicated feelings about it, about what it was and what it is now, and what it has cost you, and what it has enabled, and still arrive. Here, at the end of another day, at a basic, quiet gratitude for its continued presence, for the simple fact that it is still doing what it needs to do, still breathing, still circulating, still maintaining the intricate, improbable, continuous miracle of being alive. Your hands are resting now. Think for a moment about your hands, what they have held, who they have held, the things they have made and repaired and offered and received, the letters they wrote before there were easier ways to write, the people they touched who are no longer here to be touched, the children they lifted and steadied and eventually released into their own lives. Your hands have done so much work that they have long since stopped needing to think about it. They simply know. They remember every skill you ever taught them, and they remember every tenderness you ever expressed through them. And they are resting now, open or folded, or lying quietly at your sides, finally still after another day of being used in the service of being alive. Let them rest. Let your whole body rest. It has earned this, tonight and every night. It has earned the dark and the quiet and the softness and the warmth and the simple basic relief of lying down. The relationships that shaped your knowing. You would not be who you are tonight without the specific people who crossed your life at the specific moments they arrived. You have thought about this before, in various ways and at various hours. But tonight, in this particular quality of darkness and calm, it is worth returning to it, not to analyze, simply to feel the truth of it, the weight and the warmth of it. There were people who saw you before you could see yourself clearly, who looked at you when you were young and uncertain and performing confidence you didn't quite feel, and they saw something in you that your own self-assessment was missing. They told you things about yourself that took years to believe, but they planted those things in you, and those seeds grew slowly, in the dark, the way seeds do, and eventually they became part of how you understood your own capacity, part of why you attempted things that scared you, part of why you persisted when persistence required more of you than you felt you had. There were people who challenged you in ways that felt, at the time, like opposition, like interference, like someone standing in your way when all you wanted was to move forward. But the challenge turned out to be the very thing that made you more precise, more considered, more honest about what you actually believed versus what you had simply been repeating without examining. Those people were gifts, even when they felt like obstacles. You may or may not have thanked them. You may or may not have known while it was happening that something valuable was being forged in the friction between you. There were people who loved you imperfectly, who tried and fell short in ways that cost you something. And you have had to decide over and over throughout your life how to carry that, how to hold the fact that someone can love you genuinely and still cause real damage, how to be honest about the damage without erasing the love, how to arrive gradually at something that isn't quite forgiveness in the simple, tidy sense the word is often used, but is instead a more complicated and more honest kind of acceptance. An understanding that human love is always partial, always limited by the limitations of the person doing the loving, and that this does not make it worthless. That imperfect love, received and given, is still the substance that most of a life is made of. There were people who left too soon, who you were not finished with, whose exits from your life came before the conversation you were having with them over years and decades was anywhere near complete. You still carry those unfinished conversations. You still know what you would say if you could. You still hear, sometimes, at moments like this one, the particular sound of their voice, or feel the specific quality of their presence, or notice the absence they left in the shape of things that remind you of them. They are part of your wisdom now, the ones who stayed and the ones who left and the ones who were taken. All of them contributed to the particular texture of understanding you carry tonight into this darkness. All of them are, in some sense, still here, still part of what you know and how you know it, and why you move through the world the way you do. What failure actually built? There is something your failures built in you that your successes could never have provided on their own. You know this now in a way you could not have known it while the failures were happening. While they were happening, they felt like evidence. Evidence that you had misjudged your own capacity, that you had overreached, that you were less than you had hoped, or less than others believed, or less than the situation required of you. But failure, as you understand it from this distance, is one of the primary construction materials of character. It is not pleasant construction material. It is rough, and it splinters, and it leaves marks. But it is load-bearing in a way that nothing else is. The things you know most deeply, the things you would stake something real on, the convictions that have not been shaken by the ordinary pressures of time and opinion, most of them were built in the aftermath of something not going the way you needed it to go. You learned humility, not from being told to be humble, but from being genuinely humbled, from discovering the limits of what you could control, from finding out through direct experience that effort and intention and even talent are not always sufficient, that the world does not always cooperate with your best plans, that some doors do not open regardless of how many times or how many ways you knock. This knowledge lives differently in you than any lesson taught in comfort ever could. It is not theoretical. It is embodied. It is part of how you move through new situations, carrying the awareness of your own fallibility, not as a wound, but as a kind of ballast, a steadying awareness of your own limits that makes you more careful and more honest and more genuinely open to help than you might otherwise be. You also learned, through failure, what you are actually made of. Not what you hoped you were made of. Not what you performed being made of when people were watching, but what was actually there when things fell apart and no one was offering applause or reassurance, and you simply had to figure out what came next. Those moments revealed something to you about yourself that could not have been revealed any other way. And what they revealed was, in the end, enough. More than enough. Because you are still here, still thinking, still lying in the dark and making meaning and carrying your life forward. Which means that every time things fell apart, you found a way to put enough of it back together to continue. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, everything. The gifts hidden inside hard seasons. Every hard season of your life delivered something you could not have received any other way. This is not a comfortable thing to sit with. It does not make the hard seasons feel worth it in any simple accounting sense. Pain is not improved by the awareness that it might eventually produce wisdom. Grief is not softened by the knowledge that it will someday teach you something important about love and impermanence. These things are true and also insufficient as comfort when you are inside the difficulty. But here, on the other side, at this hour, in this quiet, you can hold both things at once. The hardness was real, and the cost was real, and you would not choose it again. And also, out of it grew things that are genuinely yours now. A depth of compassion that comfortable lives rarely develop to the same degree. An ability to sit with other people in their difficulty without rushing them toward resolution. Because you know, from having been there, that some things don't resolve quickly. And the most valuable thing another person can offer is not a solution, but a presence. A willingness to remain in the room with what is hard, rather than retreating to what is easier. You know how to do this because someone did it for you once during one of your hard seasons, or you know how to do it because no one did it for you, and you know precisely what that absence cost, and you have chosen deliberately to be for other people what you needed and didn't have. Either way, you know. And that knowing has made you more useful to the people around you than almost any other quality you possess. Hard seasons also gave you your most honest relationships. The ones forged in difficulty have a different quality than the ones forged in ease. When you have seen someone at their worst and stayed, or when someone has seen you at yours and stayed, the bond that creates is one of the most durable things in a human life. Those relationships can bear weight that others cannot. They have already been tested by something real, and they survived it, which means they carry the particular confidence that only tested things carry. You think of those relationships now, the ones built in hard weather, and there is something that moves in your chest when you do. Gratitude, perhaps, mixed with love, mixed with the particular tenderness that comes from having been genuinely known by someone and found worthy of their continued presence. The long view only age provides. You have something tonight that you simply could not have had at any earlier point in your life. A long view. The ability to look back across a span of time large enough to reveal patterns and trajectories, and the slow unfolding of things that were not visible from the inside while they were happening. From where you stand now, looking back, you can see things you were blind to for decades. You can see the through lines of your own character, the consistent qualities that express themselves differently in different circumstances, but were always recognizably yours. You can see the moments that turned out to be more consequential than they appeared at the time, and the moments that felt enormous while you were inside them, but turned out to be minor adjustments rather than defining turning points. You can see the slow, patient movement of your own growth, which from the inside often felt like stagnation, but from this distance looks like the steady and inevitable progress of someone committed, even imperfectly, to becoming. You can see the generational patterns, the things you receive from those who raised you and passed along, consciously or not, to those who came after you. You can see where cycles were broken and where they continued and what it cost to break them and what it cost not to. You can see your place in a longer story than your own individual life, the story of your family, your community, your particular moment in history, and understand yourself as both shaped by that story and as having shaped it in ways small and large. This long view is not available to the young. They live necessarily close to the surface of their own experience, unable yet to step back far enough to see the shape of it. You have that distance now. You have earned it simply by lasting long enough, and it gives you something that younger people sometimes mistake for detachment or resignation, but is actually something much more valuable. It gives you proportion, the ability to feel things fully without being consumed by them, the ability to be present in difficulty without being certain it is permanent, the ability to appreciate what is good without clinging to it desperately, the ability to hold your own life lightly enough that it doesn't suffocate you and firmly enough that it doesn't slip away from you. This is what the long view gives you. And tonight, in this quiet, it is fully and completely yours. The things that still surprise you. One of the things you didn't expect about this stage of your life is that it still surprises you. You assumed at some earlier point that by now you would be mostly done being surprised, that you would have seen enough, lived enough, to have developed a reasonably complete map of how things work and how people behave and what life tends to produce. You assumed something close to the end of genuine surprise. But you were wrong about this, and being wrong about it has been one of the more delightful discoveries of these later years. Life continues to produce things you were not expecting. People continue to exceed what you would have predicted of them. Small moments continue to carry more beauty or more meaning than seems proportionate to their apparent simplicity, and you yourself continue to surprise yourself with what you are still capable of feeling, with what still moves you, with what new understanding still manages to arrive in a mind you assumed had already assembled most of its significant conclusions. You are still capable of wonder. That is something worth knowing about yourself. Here in the dark, at this late hour, after everything, after all the years and all the losses and all the times the world failed to be what you hoped, you still find things genuinely wonderful. You still notice beauty. You still feel the specific lift that comes when something unexpected and good happens, when a person turns out to be kinder than their surface suggested, when a conversation goes somewhere more real than you anticipated, when something in the natural world catches you completely off guard with its indifference to your concerns and its perfect, uncaring loveliness. There is something deeply telling about the fact that beauty still reaches you, that music still moves something in your chest, that a particular quality of evening light, or the smell of something baking, or the sound of laughter in the next room can stop you mid-thought and pull your full attention toward what is good and present and real. This capacity did not diminish as you aged. If anything, it deepened. You receive beauty now with a gratitude that younger people who still assume beauty will always be available don't quite feel yet. You know what it means that it is still here. You know what it costs to lose things. So when beauty arrives, you meet it with your whole self. You are not cynical. You have every reason to be, and you are not. That is, quietly, a remarkable thing. It means that all of the disappointment, and all of the loss, and all of the times the world was smaller, or crueler, or more indifferent than it had any right to be, none of it broke the part of you that reaches toward what is good. That part is still reaching outward, still looking, still finding. The permission you give yourself tonight. There is something you can do tonight that is harder to do in the daytime. You can give yourself permission, quietly, privately, without needing anyone to witness it, or validate it, or agree with it. Just permission. Simple and complete. Permission to have been imperfect and to have that imperfection be a natural and expected part of a fully human life, rather than evidence of some fundamental inadequacy. Permission to have needed things, to have wanted things, to have been wrong about things and right about things and uncertain about things for longer than felt comfortable. Permission to have been, at every stage of your life, exactly where you were, rather than where some imagined better version of yourself should have been. Permission to be tired. Not just physically tired, though that too, but tired in the deeper way, the way that comes from decades of showing up, of caring about things that required your continued investment, of loving people who were complicated and losing people who mattered, and navigating a world that was not always navigable and continuing anyway, day after day, year after year, in the quiet and stubborn way that most real lives are actually lived. You have been carrying things for a very long time. Some of those things you can now, tonight, set down. Not the things that are yours to carry, not the relationships and the responsibilities and the ongoing commitments that are genuinely part of who you are, but the things that were never really yours, the expectations you absorbed from other people and mistook for your own, the judgments you internalized from voices that were not always speaking from love or wisdom, the standards you held yourself to that no reasonable person would hold another to. Those you can put down, here, tonight, in the dark, without ceremony, without announcement. You can simply decide that you are done carrying them, and then breathe and feel the release of that decision move through you. Permission, finally, to rest. Real rest. The kind that goes all the way down. The kind that your body is ready for, and your mind is approaching, and your spirit has been quietly requesting for a long time. The kind that doesn't require you to solve anything before it arrives, or to have earned it through sufficient productivity, or to have resolved the things that remain unresolved. You can rest simply because you are a living person at the end of a lived day, and rest is what living people need. That is sufficient reason. That has always been sufficient reason. What sleep offers the experienced mind. Sleep, for you now, is not the unconscious collapse of a young body that has spent all its energy and simply shuts down. It is something more considered than that, more chosen, more deeply appreciated for what it actually is and does. You know now, in a way you didn't always know, what sleep repairs. You know what a night of real rest feels like in the morning. The particular clarity, the particular willingness to engage, the particular sense that the world is manageable rather than overwhelming. And you know what its absence costs. You have lived through enough disrupted nights to have a genuine and personal understanding of sleep as something valuable, something that deserves to be approached with care, rather than postponed indefinitely. Sleep offers the experienced mind something specific that the young mind doesn't yet need in the same way. It offers consolidation, the slow, wordless, unconscious process by which the experiences of a day, a week, a decade are organized and integrated into what you know. The things you understand most deeply, the insights that feel most solid and most yours. Many of them arrived not in the moments of active thinking, but in the aftermath of sleep, in the early hours of the morning when the mind surfaces from its deeper work and brings something up with it that wasn't fully formed the night before. Sleep is where your experienced mind does some of its best knowing, where the connections are made that daylight is too loud to allow, where the questions you have been holding without answers sometimes, quietly, without fanfare, begin to resolve themselves in ways that will only become apparent to you after you wake. This is the experienced mind's relationship with sleep. Not escape, not mere recovery, a collaboration, an ongoing partnership between the waking work of living and the sleeping work of integrating and understanding and making whole. So when you close your eyes tonight, you are not leaving, you are continuing in a different register, in the quieter, deeper, more private language that sleep speaks. And what you bring back from that journey tomorrow morning will be yours in a way that adds to everything you already know, settling into the final quiet. The night is very deep now, deeper than when you started. The silence has a quality to it that is different from ordinary silence. It feels inhabited, not by anything external, by you, by your own presence, quiet and real and still and entirely here. Your body is heavy in the best sense, the kind of heaviness that comes from genuine relaxation, from muscles that have stopped holding against anything, from a body that has remembered it doesn't need to be on guard right now. There is nothing required of you between now and morning. You have no decisions to make, no problems to solve, no one who needs something from you that you haven't already given. The night is yours. This remaining darkness is yours, and sleep is close. You can feel its approach the way you feel weather approaching, not with precise definition, but with a general and trustworthy sense that something is shifting, that the atmosphere is changing, that something is on its way. Let your eyes grow heavy if they haven't already. Let the thoughts that are still moving slow their pace, not forced, not suppressed, just allowed to decelerate naturally, the way a river slows as it approaches still water. The thoughts are becoming less insistent, less demanding. They are moving through you now rather than engaging your full attention, passing like clouds across a sky that is growing calmer and calmer and more receptive to the dark. Your breathing is its own rhythm now, not controlled, not deliberate, simply happening the way it has happened every moment of your life, reliable and quiet and constant. Feel it, the rise, the fall, the brief pause at the end of each exhale, that small moment of complete stillness before the next breath begins. That pause is a kind of peace, a reminder that there are small rests built into the very act of being alive, built into every single breath, moments of complete suspension that your body has been offering you quietly and without recognition your entire life. You are enough. You have always been enough. And tonight, you believe this more fully than you may have believed it in some time. Not because everything is resolved, not because the complicated things have been made simple, but because you have sat with the full truth of your own life tonight, the beauty and the difficulty, the love and the loss, the things you did well and the things you would do differently. And on the other side of all that honesty, you are still here, still intact, still someone who deserves to rest deeply and to wake tomorrow and to continue the unrepeatable and genuinely remarkable thing that is your particular life. The closing of this particular night. Every night eventually becomes a specific night, one of the numbered nights of a specific life, different from the one before it, connected to the one that will follow, but entirely its own. Tonight is one of yours. Tonight, specifically, belongs to you, and it has given you something, as the good nights always do. It has given you the company of your own experienced mind, the quiet richness of genuine reflection, the particular comfort of being honest with yourself in the dark and finding that honesty holds rather than breaks you. You have journeyed far through time tonight, through memories and through understanding, through the long corridors of a life that is genuinely and deeply yours. You have visited your own history, not as an escape from the present, but as a way of being more fully present, more fully yourself, more fully aware of the extraordinary fact of your own continued existence in a world that asked a great deal of you and received it. You have been generous with your time and your care and your presence and your love. You have offered yourself to your life rather than withholding yourself from it. And whatever imperfections mark that offering, whatever ways in which you fell short of your own best intentions, the offering itself was real. It was genuine. It was you as fully as you were capable of being. You at each particular moment, which is all that was ever really required. The fire of this night's reflection is dying down now. The stories have settled. The memories have returned to wherever they live when they are not being actively remembered. The world outside this room is still, and the world inside your chest is moving toward the same stillness, gradually, naturally, without effort. You have earned your rest. You earned it years ago, and you earn it again every day. And tonight you earn it one more time, simply by having been here, simply by having continued, simply by being the person you are, lying in this bed, in this quiet, at the end of this particular night, among all the nights your life has given you. The fires die down, the stories settle, and the world grows still. Let your thoughts drift away like embers on the wind. Good night. You've journeyed far through time tonight. Now it's time to journey into dreams. Close your eyes, breathe, and let sleep find you.